I still remember the exact moment my life changed. Not because it was dramatic. Not because it was loud. Because it was quiet. A single decision, made in silence, that slowly destroyed everything I was supposed to become. People think regret comes from failure. From mistakes. From losing. But my regret came from choosing comfort over courage. I was 32 when I had the chance to leave. Not run away. Not escape. Leave properly. A new job in another country. A fresh start. A future that felt uncertain but alive. I had been waiting for something like that my entire life. Yet when the moment arrived, I hesitated. Because leaving meant risking everything I knew. And staying meant keeping everything I understood. So I stayed. And I told myself it was the responsible choice. I told myself I was mature. Practical. Stable. What I didn't tell myself was the truth. I was afraid. Afraid of failing somewhere new. Afraid of losing familiar faces. Afraid of becoming someone I didn't recognize. Fear disguised itself as wisdom. And I believed it. The years that followed weren't tragic. They were ordinary. And that was the real tragedy. I married someone who felt safe, not someone who felt right. I took a job that paid well, not one that inspired me. I built a life that looked good from the outside and felt empty from the inside. No chaos. No passion. No growth. Just routine. Every morning, the same coffee. Every evening, the same conversations. Every year, the same unspoken question, is this really it? But I never asked it out loud. Because asking questions leads to answers. And answers lead to change. Change felt dangerous. So I stayed still. Time didn't stop for me. It moved quietly, politely, without asking permission. My dreams didn't die. They faded. Slowly. Until they felt like someone else's memories. At work, I became reliable. At home, I became distant. Inside, I became quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet. Silence can feel like stability. Until you realize it's just absence of feeling. My marriage didn't collapse. It dissolved. No screaming. No betrayal. Just two people slowly turning into roommates. We stopped asking about each other's days. We stopped sharing dreams. We stopped trying. Comfort replaced connection. And comfort is dangerous. Because it makes you forget what alive feels like. Some nights, I stood by the window and imagined a version of myself who had left when he had the chance. A man who took risks. A man who failed and learned. A man who lived. I envied that imaginary version more than any real person. That's when I realized, I wasn't jealous of others. I was jealous of myself. The self I never allowed to exist. The moment that broke me didn't look like a breakdown. It looked like a birthday. My 45th. No surprises. No excitement. Just polite congratulations and quiet dinners. As I sat at the table, watching candles melt, a thought hit me like a slow wave: this is the life you chose. Not the life I deserved, not the life I dreamed of. The life I chose. And suddenly, that felt unbearable. Not because it was bad. Because it was final. Opportunities don't disappear loudly. They close their doors gently. And one day, you realize the keys no longer fit. I tried to convince myself I was grateful. Grateful for stability. Grateful for health. Grateful for peace. But gratitude without fulfillment feels hollow. You can appreciate a cage. That doesn't mean you belong in it. I began to feel like a stranger in my own life. Everything was familiar. Yet nothing felt personal anymore. My reflection showed a man who had accepted less than he wanted. Not because he had to. Because he was tired of wanting. That's when the regret turned heavy. Not sharp. Heavy. The kind that sits in your chest and whispers, you knew better. I didn't ruin my life in one mistake. I ruined it by choosing the easier path every time. The safe path. The predictable path. The quiet path. Until my life became quiet too. Too quiet. Then one evening, I received an email. From the company that had once offered me that job abroad. Not an offer. An update. They were celebrating their anniversary. Sharing stories of people who took chances. People who moved. People who changed. I recognized a few names. People who were once where I was. People who didn't stay. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel it fully, loss. Not of a job. Of a version of my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the dark apartment, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs. Everything I had built. Everything that felt meaningless. I didn't hate my life. I hated what it had cost me. I had traded possibility for predictability. And predictability had slowly erased me. I realized something painful: the worst regrets don't come from what we did. They come from what we never tried. And my life was full of things I never tried. Never dared. Never risked. Never lived. The silence around me wasn't peaceful anymore. It was suffocating. I didn't need a new country. I didn't need a new job. I needed a new courage. But courage comes late when fear arrives early. And fear had shaped my entire life. The question wasn't whether I could still change. The question was whether I was brave enough to face how much I had already lost. Regret doesn't scream. It waits. It waits for silence, for stillness, for the moments when there's nothing left to distract you from yourself. And when it speaks, it doesn't ask for permission. After that email, I couldn't pretend anymore. Every familiar street felt like a reminder. Every routine felt like a sentence I had written for myself. I started noticing the cracks in my life that I had ignored for years. The way my wife and I spoke only about logistics. The way weekends felt like empty space instead of rest. The way my job felt like a duty, not a purpose. Nothing was wrong. But nothing was alive either. I realized I had been confusing stability with happiness. They're not the same. Stability keeps you standing. Happiness makes you move. One evening, I sat across from my wife at the dinner table and tried to remember the last time we had talked about our dreams. Not schedules. Not bills. Dreams. I couldn't. So I asked her something I had been afraid to ask for years. Do you ever feel like we chose the safe version of life? She looked surprised. Then tired. I think we chose the version that didn't scare us, she said. That answer stayed with me. Because fear had shaped every major decision I had ever made. Not wisdom. Not passion. Fear. The next days felt heavier. I kept replaying the moment I had declined that job abroad. The polite email. The rational explanation. The calm tone. I had sounded confident. But confidence isn't the same as courage. Confidence protects your image. Courage risks it. I started wondering if it was too late. Not to move countries. To move forward. I didn't want to run away from my life. I wanted to finally participate in it. So I tried something small. I enrolled in a creative workshop. Something I had always wanted to do. Something that had no practical value. No guarantees. Just expression. The first day, I almost turned back. I felt old. Out of place. Exposed. Everyone else seemed hungry. Curious. Alive. I felt like someone who had arrived late to his own story. But I stayed. And for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar, Engagement. Not excitement. Engagement. I wasn't watching life anymore. I was inside it. The feeling didn't last long. Reality always catches up. One night, my wife confronted me gently. "You've changed," she said. "You're not distant, but you're not here either." She was right. I was waking up, but not sharing the awakening. Because awakening brings questions. And questions threaten stability. "I don't know who I am anymore," I admitted. She didn't panic. She didn't cry. She just nodded slowly. "I think we stopped asking that a long time ago." That honesty hurt more than any argument. Because it meant we had both surrendered quietly. Not to each other. To routine. I wasn't angry. I was grieving. Grieving the life I could have lived. Grieving the risks I never took. Grieving the courage I postponed. Then came the real dilemma. An unexpected message. From an old colleague. Someone who had taken the job abroad. He was organizing a reunion. In the city I never moved to. The same place I had once imagined as my second life. He wrote, "You should come. It's never too late to visit the road you didn't take." The words hit me harder than any regret. Visiting isn't the same as choosing. But it's closer than dreaming. I didn't tell my wife at first. Not because I wanted to hide. Because I didn't know what the trip meant yet. Was it curiosity, closure, escape, or hope? I booked the ticket. Not to run away. To look my regret in the face. The plane ride felt unreal. I wasn't chasing a new life. I was chasing an old possibility. When I arrived, the city felt alive in a way my own life hadn't for years. People walked with purpose. Cafes buzzed with conversation. The air felt full of movement. And I felt like a visitor in a life that could have been mine. The reunion was warm. Stories. Laughter. Shared memories. They talked about risks they took. Failures they survived. Growth they earned. No one had perfect lives. But they had lived them. One of them looked at me and said, "You were always the smartest among us. We thought you'd be the one who left." I smiled. But inside, something broke. Smart doesn't equal brave. I walked alone that night through unfamiliar streets, imagining myself in the city 15 years earlier. Younger. Hungry. Uncertain. Alive. I realized something painful: the life I chose didn't ruin me. It numbed me. And numbness is harder to escape than pain. When I returned home, everything felt smaller. Not worse. Smaller. The walls. The conversations. The silence. My wife noticed immediately. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked. "I found what I didn't choose," I replied. She didn't argue. She understood. Because deep down, she had made her own quiet compromises too. We weren't enemies. We were survivors of our own caution. That night, I stood by the window again. But this time, I wasn't imagining another life. I was questioning this one. Not with anger. With honesty. Could I still build meaning where I was, or had I waited too long? The hardest truth wasn't that I missed opportunities. It was that I had accepted a life without purpose. And purpose can't be postponed forever. It either grows. Or it disappears. I didn't want to disappear. Not again. I didn't expect clarity. I expected regret to stay loud, heavy, permanent. But something changed after that trip. Not outside. Inside. For the first time in years, I stopped asking what my life could have been. And started asking what it still could become. Not in another country. Not in another version of myself. Here. Now. The hardest truth I had to face wasn't that I missed opportunities. It was that I had stopped creating new ones. Regret doesn't come from the past. It comes from staying frozen in it. One evening, my wife and I sat in silence, the familiar kind that had defined us for years. But this time, the silence felt different. Not empty. Honest. "I don't want to live on autopilot anymore," I said quietly. "Not with you. Not with myself." She didn't look surprised. She looked relieved. "I was afraid to say that first," she admitted. "We weren't broken. We were paused. And pauses can be unpaused. If both people are willing to move again. We didn't make dramatic promises. We didn't reinvent our lives overnight. We chose something harder. Attention. We started talking again. Not about schedules, about fears. Not about duties, about desires. Some conversations were uncomfortable. Some were painful. But all of them were real. And real feels better than safe. At work, I stopped hiding behind routine. I asked for projects that challenged me. I stopped pretending I didn't care. Caring is risky. But not caring is deadly. I didn't chase my old dream. I created a new one. Smaller. Closer. But alive. And for the first time in years, I felt engaged with my own existence. Not inspired. Engaged. There's a difference. Inspiration fades. Engagement stays. Some nights, regret still visited me. Quietly. Not as punishment. As reminder. A reminder of what comfort had cost me. A reminder to stay awake. The past didn't disappear. It didn't need to. It became part of my story instead of the end of it. I realized something important: you don't need a second life to start over. You need a second perspective. The life I had chosen didn't ruin me. It taught me. It taught me what fear looks like when it pretends to be wisdom. It taught me what silence feels like when it replaces meaning. It taught me the danger of waiting for someday. Someday is a trap. Now is a choice. I didn't become the man I dreamed of at 30. I became the man I needed to be at 45. Aware. Present. Honest. I stopped measuring my life by what it lacked. I started measuring it by what I was willing to give. My attention. My courage. My presence. Regret doesn't disappear when you change your life. It disappears when you stop running from it. And I finally stopped. I didn't make one choice that ruined my life. I made many small choices that protected it from meaning. Now, I make different ones. Not louder. Not bigger. Just braver. Because life doesn't need to be extraordinary to be worth living. It just needs to be lived on purpose.